he's up too.
Yeah.
I know a couple of guys that I talk to there. I tell them, "Oh, go to Brown and Brown." They're like, "Yeah, but I don't see your face because your face always pops up." They're like, "Oh, I'm like, hey, yeah, I'm on that. It's something that we're doing, but
exactly."
All right, so what do we got
there? Yeah. All right. So I think you can see the bracket too, right over here on this side.
Yeah, I see just the one on the left. I don't see anything on the right.
And we'll start region by region. So I believe this is the South region. Auburn is your number 1 seed. Oh, actually, why am I doing this? Welcome to Brown and Browner. It's been a while for all of you all. Unfortunately, we had to get busy with our lives. We had to figure out ways to pay for our egg cartons these days, just like everyone else.
Put it on layaway.
Yes. But with that said, we will return to the wonderful world of sports. As we know, it's NCAA season this time of year. And I feel like it's one of the better times in sports because you got basketball, college basketball, you got NBA kind of winding down, you got baseball kicking off here shortly in the next couple of weeks. It's a fun time of year. And of course, the NFL draft. We'll get to those latter topics later in next couple of weeks, but at least the moment here, it's NCAA basketball time, it's St. Patty's, it's everything else that March is all about in the madness.
It'll truly be some madness this year.
Yep.
Even though we were talking about this earlier before the show, there may be some chalk, and a lot of times, let's be real, many of the people who go through the process of filling out a bracket tend to vote a lot of chalk, unless they have some rooted, interest in a team because they went to that college or friends went to that college, whatever it is. But I still think there's always going to be a surprise in the NCAA.
There will be. There's always room for upsets and surprises. I think the interesting twist for this year and the last couple of years is NIL, because it has changed the dynamics of college sports and the whole landscape, honestly, from top to bottom. It'll change even more so next year when you get the revenue sharing basis. So you're going to see smaller schools sitting there being able to afford, players that are worth $10 million a year. I think notably, I believe it was DePaul for next year has an outlay of $100 million devoted to their basketball team next year. Think about that for a second.
And they'll still suck.
Oh, well, historically, it hasn't been great, but when a school has the ability to offer $10 million to a star high school kid to come play, you're going to be able to recruit now with the big dogs. You're going to be able to recruit with the Dukes, the Kansases, everybody else.
And that's the pro, in my opinion, behind the NIL, because recruitment has always been where the bigger colleges have the advantage. So now if you can actually get a couple of star players, you might get a couple more star players to come over to you, even if they're not going to get paid the same amount of money. So there's a difference there that I think helps. There are other things that don't help, but I think that aspect of NIL levels the playing ground a little bit more. I mean, the bigger colleges have a bigger pot to be able to pay people, so they still have an advantage. But now you can take little junior, kid out of the ghetto and, you know what? This big time college is looking out for you, but they don't really care about you. You come to our school, we're going to pay you more than they might. And we're going to make sure that we do everything for you. Just, what? Kevin Garnett got that same deal. I was working with a guy whose brother was an agent, and they went to Kevin Garnett when he was down in the South, said, hey, we got a package for you. Come to Chicago to go to this high school. We'll get your mom a job. We'll hook you up, and you'll be on your way to be able to meet your potential, which is to be a professional athlete. So I'm all good with that aspect of it. There are others that I think present issues that actually favor the bigger colleges as well.
I mean, for those of you that are fortunate to have grown up in the 90s, like myself and Mr. Brown here have, the movie Blue Chips was the epitome of what you're seeing today in NIL. I'm sorry to say. It is the greatest thing on earth, because you saw, I forgot I think it was some rogue school in Louisiana that was portrayed with Nick Nolte as the coach, who was able to get Shaq, Hardaway, and everybody else to come down because of the bag of money or the tractor or whatever was offered up basically to those players and their families and their jobs to get them to come to those smaller schools. Well, guess what? That's what we have today in a legal manner in college basketball. Welcome to the pros. Welcome to a new way and the new era of how college sports is going to function for football, basketball, and even non-revenue sports for that matter. I had the privilege of going to a non-revenue women's tennis match at Maryland 2 weeks ago. And I tell you what, their facilities are on par with the U.S. Open because of the money being trickled down in college sports today. They got Hawkeye running on a rogue tennis court.
Well, and you know what's crazy about that? And this is part of what we both believe in from an NIL standpoint.
Yep.
The colleges and other entities have made so much money on these kids under the pretense that a degree means something to some of these athletes, which really it didn't, or could benefit them. Because if I'm a kid from the ghetto, I got an 8th grade education, I'm in college, I can't hack it from a academic standpoint. Yep. But you're making millions, if not billions, off of my face, my play, my number, my jerseys, all of these things that you sell as I'm at your school. You know,
shout out Ed O'Bannon for doing what he did. I mean, he changed the game.
You know, I'll have them missing like the F and O Bannons, if anybody knows that Lil Wayne lyric.
Now, on that note that you just mentioned, that's where I have a big beef with NIL today. So, because of the way that you've changed the game in terms of being able to offer money to the underprivileged kid or whoever it is, but he has the sports talent or she has the sports talent or whatever it is, no longer, in my opinion, I'll make a bold declaration, should you be using the term student athlete ever again, because of 2 reasons. One, in many cases, you're getting these kids on their sports talent or whatever it is, and bringing them into your schools. Yeah, they're still academically qualifying using the baseline threshold of 2.5 GPA, whatever the hell you want to call it, and a baseline SAT. But I'm sorry, but there is no more loyalty left in college basketball either. Kids are not sticking around for 4 years. Kids are not sticking around for 2 years because guess what? They'll get the bag from one school, they'll play there for a year, they'll get their rep, and then guess what? They'll bounce to the next school. Case in point, look at women's basketball. You've got several players that were on the LSU women's basketball team over the last couple of years that won the Natty and everything else. Haley Van Lith, good example. She's been to 3 schools in 3 years. She was a top 10 player in college basketball. Why? Because she was handed the bag to go to those different schools. There is no brand loyalty left in college basketball. So when a kid gets brought up or recruited into a school, it's for the money. They're not staying there for the coach, the team, the brand, anything like that. And because of that, another thing and we'll talk about this with the NCAA tournament, you're not seeing kids play, I don't believe, and I'm going to call this out, for as hard as they could, and more importantly, for the loyalty and the pride that it brings to play for the jersey in the front. Yes, I am talking to you, Kansas Jayhawk fans, and I think you sympathize with me. But at the same time, you can see that the culture of college basketball and college football has changed to where kids are there for their own interest. And it could be just for their team, for that moment, just like you saw with the Ohio State football team this year, with Will Howard having transferred 3 schools himself, by the way. But at the end of the day, you're not seeing the rivalries and all the things that made college what it was, growing up in the 80s, 90s, and the 2000s. You're not seeing the Kansas-Missouri border war. You're not seeing the University of Illinois and all those Big Ten schools fight like they used to. Yes, they play conference games, but it's not the same anymore. You're playing literally for yourself and your team, and that's it for the moment. You're not playing for the long-term pride and designation.
All right, I feel you on that and agree. I like the rivalries. I'm from the same time frame, maybe a little bit older, but I'll argue this. This is what capitalism is at its finest. And if you want to look at how I get your opinion on that, and not that I disagree with it, but I'll oppose a different side of the argument. What about the kids who never had a choice? What about the kids who got buried, or the kid who, back in the day when people didn't know the worth of all of this, a kid from the ghetto got a $5,000 check and they thought that they were millionaires, and you took full advantage of them. They had no choices, nowhere to go. There was no portal. There was no nothing. And then you went through your 4 years, and then you became nobody because you didn't become a pro. If you weren't becoming a pro, you became a nobody in many cases, unless you already had sort of like the academics behind the degree where you could apply it. Also, when you looked at how, the college landscape has changed with when Jordan left early, and all of the Duke players left early. all of those players left early because they had the talent to go to the pros. But they didn't have any option other than staying in school and not getting paid or going to the pros. Now kids have an option. So I don't disagree that we lose some of the things. We could be called old fogies in that regard because the landscape has changed. The other thing I'll pose for you, the last thing as an argument to that is, yes, we don't have the rivalries, but are the rivalries not there because the schools went somewhere else or the players went somewhere else? The rivalries aren't there because the powers that be want the greed. They want the money. How do we get the money? Well, we're going to get rid of some of these conferences because they're meaningless, and we're going to have these kids travel basically across the entire continent or in the entire United States to play Rutgers because now you and Rutgers are in the same conference, even though you are separated by thousands and thousands of miles. That's ridiculous. But it's done.
And to support your point, I mean, one thing I hate is the conference realignment. I absolutely do chalk that up to the number one reason why rivalries have been destroyed. Absolutely, unequivocally. The money and the greed there is at the top, not at the student levels. 100% agree. To support your argument for students, take a look at St. John's. It is the darling story of the NCAA this year, I believe, and the redemption story from what I believe is still one of the greatest coaches in NCAA history with Rick Pitino. So
a little dirty, but yes, he's a great coach.
He's a great coach in every right. Yes, what he did was wrong, and he admitted. There was actually a great segment I saw yesterday on the Pat McAfee show. So they brought him on. He interviewed it. Yeah, he dogged the NCAA for the corrupt organization it is, and absolutely, I 100% agree with him. But he did admit that he what he did was bad and wrong, no question. So he gets what he did. At the same time, the NCAA has been a corrupt and an unstable institution for far too long. So I do like the fact that conferences and students have now the control in that regard, where the powers that be don't have the control anymore. Yeah, they're still making their money, but they've ceded their control back down to the levels of schools, coaches, players, which is where it should be in the first place. And yes, the opportunities created. Case in point, St. John. You went from a school that had a tremendous history with Lou Carnesecca and all of that.
Oh yeah,
it died because in New York, like you said, either you become a pro or you're in the streets because of academically not qualifying. So there was only two avenues. Now you got that third avenue. St. John's can offer the money, can get you paid for that short-term run or that long-term run, whatever you can get into. At that point in time, basically, that opens the door for you to go to a school, in one way or another. So that's what's kind of cool, I think. And what better redemption story than St. John's, who plays at the Garden, Rick Pitino. I mean, you can't write a better scenario for these kids in this situation. DePaul, like I mentioned, wait till next year when they can offer up all this money. Maybe Chicago sees a resurgence of being able to actually recruit from its own city for once.
And that's been the problem with DePaul and some of the other schools, but especially DePaul since the 70s and 80s when they had the killer teams, 70s really. I think it stopped with like Mark Aguirre and Terry Cummings. But they no longer are getting the kids from the inner city schools where, the Dunbars, wherever. You're not getting these kids, Westinghouse, coming to your school anymore. And that's what, then all of a sudden they had no leverage to be able to bring these kids over and then continue that legacy that they had built over the 70s.
Yep. No, exactly. And that's the thing. Like the NIL is something I am all for. College kids should get paid for the time that they're served, regardless of their talent level. And honestly, it does open the door to greater opportunities to be recruited, even if you're, say, a mid-tier high school performer or what it is. Because I get it. It's more competitive nowadays. In every sporting landscape, all the way down to middle school, in fact. It's scary. So this does open the door for kids that aren't at the top echelon of 1%. And now it's extended to the 2% or whatever it is in terms of talent and ability. So that's great. In terms of when you get to that school, you play for them and all of that, I would say the non-revenue sports are better than the revenue sports about this, but you're not going to see a kid stick around for too long because they're going to look for the next bag now. Because like you said, capitalism is going to be the king here. So I wish there was a way to change that. I think I have a solution for it, and I think many people do too, is to have these kids sign a 3-year guarantee to stick around or whatever it is. That's what would, I think, be back the rivalry aspect and the loyalty aspect of the game.
Yeah, barring any lawyer finding loopholes with that, but I agree. I think if you have the bag of money, let's be real about everything that we live through. I get a salary, I sign a contract, I got an NDA, I get this, I get that to get paid. The kids should have something similar, a structure in place.
Yeah.
I think that would help. I think the other thing that truly would help is this. If you make your house a home for these kids, and you're not also playing you're just a number we're using you to make money card, now all of a sudden I feel like I'm someplace I want to be. And that trumps money. Let's be real. Anybody who's listening, you're in your company. Why are you still at that company? Is it because of what you're getting paid, or is it because of the atmosphere and the culture that is built around you? So I do think that there are things that are outside of money that institutions could, implement that would help them retain these kids for a period longer. Now, for the ones who have the talent to become pros, you couldn't retain them anyway. But for the others, you can create that kind of atmosphere where, hey, you know what? Somebody's going to pay me an extra $50,000 or $100,000. I don't want to leave because I'm not sure what that situation is, but I know what this situation is right here.
This goes back to long-term prosperity, not just for the player, but also for the school. Okay, let's say I'm forced to sign a 3-year deal to join XYZ college. I'm going to have loyalty to that school. I know I'm getting paid, everything else. And then more importantly, 15 years down the road, when I got a kid that wants to go to school, guess what?
I'm sending them there.
College,
Well, and I think the other thing should be, as with any contract, you're trying to think for the current and the long term. And I feel like if you had a contract with these kids, what you should also be introducing, or maybe they introduce, is, hey, you know what? I also want 1.2% of the royalties if I help this team go from not making the NCAAs to making the Sweet 16. If I am able to elevate the perception, the fandom, the whatever with this college, I should also benefit from that. It shouldn't be a one-time thing like the old school rappers used to get. If you listen, look at all of the rappers in the 80s, all of them, they got rich at the moment in their minds, because rich is a concept, right? To me, if I'm very poor, $20,000 makes me rich. Well, okay, I give you a signing bonus of $50,000. You don't get any of the rights to your music. Well, so when you blow up and you've made our record label what it is, you get no benefit from it after the $50,000 I gave you to sign this contract. That's what happens to these kids. And if the kids, you have to be savvy enough, and I think kids will become that, especially once you add lawyers and agents into it, because they're going to look out for the best interest.
This is a job creation.
Yeah. They'll start opening up doors like this where, okay, you may not make the pros, but you're going to make this organization become better than it was. So therefore, you're going to get residual monies beyond the time you're there at that school. And I think if you do something like that, that's another way that you can get people to stay versus leave. So there are creative ways to approach that.
Yeah, I call it the Easy-E versus Dr. Dre philosophy. Easy took the money up front. Dr. Dre got the residuals and look at it.
Exactly. But again, it's just like how the internet was. This is just starting. So people haven't learned how to utilize the system to the best of their ability for their advantages. But that'll come.
Yeah, that'll come. No, like I said, I think we've covered a great aspect here with the NIL, all the little intricacies that are in play today. Like I said, it's going to be a fun evolution over the next few years, but I think next year really is going to be the cake topper, because now you got revenue sharing in play from all this money that's been made over the last 2 years from all these tournaments and things like that. And now these smaller schools, they're going to get their piece of the apple. So it's going to get interesting to see where recruiting goes and everything else for all the, like I said, overall great for the student athlete, or what we used to call student athletes.
Right. I think that's what you're right about that. But that was the farce that was put up to us before. Institutions using that student athlete label to justify, hey, you know what? They're a student, and because we gave them a scholarship, they're also an athlete.
Yep.
But they don't make money off of any one of those things. We
make all the money off of it. From the old school perspective, these folks were majoring in communications. I don't know what, like anything some obscure,
Exactly. You said it though, communication and And basically, let's be real. And this is something I wanted to say earlier. I forgot to say. For all of the kids that they went to the ghettos, and I applaud, because back in the day, many of these schools didn't even want to go to the ghettos because they were afraid of the ghetto. And I forget the name of the coach at Miami right now, but the Miami coach went to these areas and he recruited these players, and he was sincere, and he built the kind of culture that I was talking about. And then Miami University took off. But
Dennis Erickson and Jimmy Johnson, baby.
No, before him, before both of them.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, you're right. Yeah.
He was the one. They benefit from that, but he was the one who established that. But when you look at this, the way they're doing with these kids, they're a kid from the ghetto, and I know a lot of teachers. I know a few teachers, not a lot, but I know a few who work in the inner city schools, and I can tell you, many of these schools, and you mentioned DePaul went that route where they were saying, you know what, we're going to take academics over sports. And then their sports disappeared because they couldn't get those athletes who were also academically ready. How many kids are coming from King or Simeon or Westinghouse or any of these schools, Dunbar, are even carrying a 2.5 grade point average when they come out of high school to get to that next level? So we rig the system to ensure that they can be utilized so that the institutions can make money off of them. Not because we're hoping that they can become great themselves, but because we want to be able to make money off of them, because they are a talent and people would pay to see them, and they are going to make our program greater. But let's not kid ourselves. They changed those rules. There was no 2.5. All of these other schools, and it's funny because you'll see every now and again there'll be some investigation and one school will get called out. But all of the schools are doing it though. Derrick Rose didn't have somebody take his SAT or ACT, but that's been happening all over. Who are these teachers' aides who do the papers for these kids in school because they don't have the mental fortitude to be able to get through writing a series of papers and doing homework? They got somebody doing that for them.
Now, going back to the blue chips analogy, think back to Leon Bedeau. He didn't take the SATs. He got 400 points for his name. Come on now.
But you see what I'm saying? So the system has always been rigged. It's just that the ones who do the rigging were the ones making the money. Now, now there's an opportunity for others, the people being used, the commodity, to actually have value and get money from that too.
Yep. No, like I said, the NCAA was willing to give up the control in order to get even more money. That's basically the long and gist of it. I mean, powers that be were like, you know what, we don't need the control factor. We'll just get paid our dollars and be happy. Which, hey, if that's going to work, it's going to work. We'll see how it plays out in the next few years. That said, let's dive right into what is fun of March Madness, and we'll talk about some of the same storylines we just mentioned within each of these contexts of some of these teams and some of the players that are going to come up. So, starting off with the South region, number 1 seed overall, Auburn. Janai Broome, potential player of the year, competing with Cooper Flagg. Frankly, Auburn's been a juggernaut all season long. They came out of arguably the toughest conference in the country with, I believe it was 14 bids that went into the NCAA this year, which is just unheard of.
Well, it's unheard of, but think about it. How many schools are in the SEC now? Versus
again, going back to the realignment. Conference realignment, again, has changed the dynamic where, honestly, the powers that be are going to get these. The SEC, the Big 10, the Big 12, they own all the teams. So you're going to see these shifts in that way, and all those schools have the money and everything else. Like I said, give it 2 years when the money has to trickle down to the smaller conferences and smaller schools. We might see more parity, but for at least this year, we're going to see a lot of top heavy stuff. And like I said, Auburn was the cream of the crop in the ACC. Yes, it was a juggernaut of a schedule, but they are good.
Didn't they lose a couple of games towards the end? They didn't win their conference tournament. They lost to Tennessee, right? I think they lost to another team right before the conference tournament. So
they did.
They're not unbeatable. They're not unbeatable.
I've never been and I've never will be sold on a gentleman that coaches them. I think Bruce Pearl is a scumbag also in the NCAA world.
he has been, but you could call Calipari, you could call
we'll get to that one too in a minute too.
You could call all of them scumbags, but I think he's a great coach. He knows how to get players to play and win. So
that dude,
I'll give him credit for that.
He is a master motivator. So to that effect, he has resurrected Auburn basketball and no questions asked. And I think he's built a powerhouse. There's no question.
And here's why I think Auburn won't win and may not even make it to the Final Four.
Yep.
Because they're Auburn. Do you
Yes,
recall some of
exactly.
the
And
Auburn
that's same
teams
here.
who have been
Amen.
highly touted in the past? And what did they do? They floundered and flopped. So
I like to think that this is the most suspect region in the NCAA tournament because, yes, you've got the number one overall Auburn. Auburn's never been a perennial basketball school. Bruce Pearl has always managed to, I wouldn't say necessarily choke in the NCAAs, but he hasn't had his top players show up at the right time. And like you just said, with the downfall of the last couple of games that they've had down the stretch, I think they are vulnerable, and especially in a very tough and loaded region. Louisville and Creighton is an interesting matchup because Louisville finished second in the ACC behind Duke, but everybody, I think, publicly acknowledges that the ACC was very top-heavy and overall weak as a conference. To say that Louisville finished second in a mediocre conference in that regard, which is why they are the 8th seed, kind of justifies that. You're playing against the Creighton Blue Jays. The Creighton Blue Jays have been perennially a lights-out baller team that can knock down players in threes. I mean,
every year for the longest, Creighton has had that type of team, and I'm taking Creighton against Louisville on my sheet.
I'm taking Creighton, and I think they have a great chance against Auburn as well. Creighton has got a star player. I think his name is Kalkenbrenner. They schooled the hell out of my Jayhawks at the beginning of the year, and I'm not saying it because they schooled the Jayhawks. It's because it's Creighton, and those guys know how to play come tournament time. They've got a great coach and a great program.
Agree. Totally agree with that.
So that would be a great, matchup at the top line. Michigan, winners of the Big Ten, mind you.
Which I had them on a parlay to beat, who was it, Wisconsin. Unfortunately, one of the pro teams lost. But yeah, they look decent.
Yet another school, big sports school, basketball. Yeah, you had the Fab Five back in the day, but since then hasn't been like the same as the Fab Five era.
Wait a minute, didn't they also have the era? Trying to remember the coach. He was coach of the Fab Five as well, and they beat Illinois in the Final Four. And went on to win a championship. I forget the star player at the time, but he was actually pretty good and went on to have a halfway decent pro career.
Yeah. No, like I said, Michigan's got the game and the power and the tout. However, they're playing a senior-laden UC San Diego team. And UC San Diego, I can't remember if they're still coached by Steve Fisher or not.
Steve Fisher was the coach I was talking about because he was the coach of Michigan. I know. And I think he is still coaching UC of San Diego.
So the NCAA has a funny way, I would say, in the last 5 to 10 years of setting up the most peculiar matchups, as you like to say, in the NCAA to create some hype. So, yes, I think this is going to be a great matchup in the first round. This is where you could see a 5-12 matchup, upset like we do. But I think Michigan, they've come through a gauntlet of a conference. I'll get to the team. I think that's probably the best one in the Big Ten here in a second. But I think Michigan probably wins this matchup against UC San Diego.
Okay, and UC of San Diego, it says the coach is Eric Olin.
Okay, so they changed up. So it's not Steve Fisher anymore.
UC San Diego Tritons. That's right.
Yep. So it's not Steve Fisher anymore. But I'm picking Michigan in this one because they did come through a tougher conference and they won a Big Ten tournament. So
I agree.
A&M and Yale. So A&M, another team coming out of the SEC. The gauntlet that is. It's a 4 seed. Yale is just one of those schools out of the Ivy Leagues that just, magically between them, Princeton, and Harvard, you never know what you're going to get. And one of these years, you get an upset.
I would love to see it.
Yep. Remember that the entire Ivy League plays this slow, methodical brand of basketball. It's just funny. It's the Princeton style, if you will.
Well, so let's be real. They're like the old, Boston Celtics, those kind of teams. Not exciting, but can wear you down and win games. Not athletically. They're somewhat athletically challenged, which lends to that kind of play. And let's read into what I mean by athletically challenged.
Yep.
That means that they don't have people who look like me at their school. They got
12 engineers. Yeah, they got 12 engineers on the court basically trying to battle.
And I'm not mad at them. And again, I'm rooting for them. I hope they do win.
No, I think so. But at the end of the day, I'm picking A&M. They came out of a gauntlet of a conference. I think they've played battle-tested teams, and especially slow, methodical basketball. I don't think prevails in this case. I think you got A&M. So you got a potential A&M Michigan matchup. I'm still picking Michigan, I think, even though it's a 4-5 matchup. I feel like Michigan's got that battle-tested team that came out of the Big Ten at the end of the day.
I agree with that. I think, the reality is this: those small time colleges and the ones who won the big sky and the big this and the that and whatever, they're the underdogs in every game they're going to play.
Right.
You would like to cheer for them and hope that they win, but they're not battle tested because they played in their own conferences with lesser talent. So, the nod would be more towards those teams who have been through the fight with tougher challenges like Michigan versus any of those lower seeds.
Yep. So I think that sets up a potential Michigan. And who are you picking between Auburn and Creighton there?
If I'm doing my sheet, I'm picking Auburn. But
yes,
if I'm rooting for a team who I think can win, I see Creighton having a possibility there. And one of the things you notice in March Madness, the march towards the madness, or the madness in the march, is when teams who are deemed to make the Final Four or be, have a chance to win, get under that pressure, get in the last 5 minutes of the game, and they aren't up 20 points or 15 points. All of a sudden, you start to see who is really the cream of the crop, and who are those teams who have just been basically they've been overrated and overinflated in their own heads about how good they are. That's where it comes in. And if Creighton can stay close enough, I want to see if Auburn prevails.
I wholly agree on both fronts. On paper, I pick Auburn with as good a matchup as I think it is. I think if it's close within the last 5 minutes, I'm going Creighton because I think Creighton can shoot lights out over those guys. Auburn's got that middle presence with Janai Broome. I have yet to see if their surrounding cast can carry a team through a Final Four pressure situation. So that's where it's going to get interesting. And frankly, most people I don't think have lauded the fact that Auburn has like a depth thing going on. And honestly, that's what wins championships in the NCAA tournament. You've got to have that 6th, 7th, 8th man step up in every scenario that I've seen over the last 10 years. And that's what really propels a team to make that deep run into March.
I agree, especially if any of your star players get into foul trouble. You need to be able to spell them and have a player that can come in and have a positive rating during that time on the floor versus getting scored on and also committing errors and such. So,
and honestly, that's the basis for where I will pick my national championship, and I'll get to that in a second as well. So, Ole Miss, you got the resurrection of Chris Beard at this point. I think he's one of the greatest coaches of the latest era. Unfortunately, got caught with that whole, domestic situation and whatever at Texas. So he got kicked out after making the run with Texas Tech and everything else. He's back. He's re-recruited at Ole Miss, a program that's never been known to be a basketball powerhouse, by the way.
A powerhouse in any sport, to be honest. Okay, they got some football.
I can't tell you much.
I hope they have a good volleyball team, because I don't know about anything else Ole Miss. And let's just say something about the coach. We talk about what sleazy is when we talk about the Calipari and Bruce Pearls. Wasn't he a little sleazy too, though?
He was. Right. That was the whole reason for the debate. Yeah.
And again, we're all human. We all make mistakes. But, I think that we just need to, again, acknowledge those things when we talk about coaches. Yeah, it's easy to get resurrected when people forget about some of the things you've done.
Yep. Nope. And that's part of the issue. Now, I forget who the feed-in game is here, but I'm going to probably pick Ole Miss just because they've had let's see if I can even find the feed-in game on this one. Nope, I don't have the feed-in game on my printable bracket either. But either way, I'm going Ole Miss in the first round at least. I mean, I think they're a battle-tested team. It's a Chris Beard team. He's recruited well. SEC again, so I'm going to go with that. But then here's where the interesting matchup comes in. Iowa State and Lipscomb. So Iowa State just lost arguably its best player, Gilbert, for the tournament.
That's a big hit.
Now, interesting for Iowa State, he's not, yes, he's their best player, technically speaking. Their best player is actually their 6th man, who averages almost 20 points a game. The crazy depth on this team is quite impressive on Iowa State, which is what I love to watch, especially watching a Big 12, being a Big 12 fan. I just don't know if they have the stability yet in terms of being able to win multiple games, because their problem is they can beat the best of the best. They are that good. But the next week they will lose to Colorado or something,
Well, and there's nothing worse than a team that plays up or plays down to their opponents.
Yeah, and that's not great for Mark. Yeah.
And I think the other thing that could be challenging here, losing your best player, if your next best player is your sixth man, the sixth man is somebody who's used to coming in at a certain point in time. Now that person has to start the game. Does that ruin the continuity of the offense? And I don't say ruin, but change it to where, okay, maybe we're doing well here, but now that we're going to the next wave of players, we don't have that sixth man who's running the show there and doing that. So it makes you wonder if they can be, you mentioned stability, to be able to have that continuity throughout the rest of the team as they go through their substitutions and their normal way of playing and putting players in and out of the game.
Yep. Now, Iowa State is an interesting team because they haven't relied on this simple premise of being able to recruit out of high school, which is kind of interesting for them, given where they are geographically. They have relied solely on transfers and international players. So it's truly a blended team in that sense. Otzelberger prides himself on that, apparently. They've got a few guys, I think, from Europe that are solid. They've got transfers from literally all over the country that have come there because of what's offered in terms of facilities and things at Iowa State. Like I said, it's a nicely blended team. When it's clicking, it's unstoppable. These guys can sink threes, make baskets, hit the jumpers, everything they can. But like you said, they play down to their competition, unfortunately.
That's not a good trait of any team for any team.
And when you're playing something like a 14 seed, like a Lipscomb out of Nashville, who wins its conference tournament, wins a ton of games, everything else, those kids are motivated. Mid-major or not, they are motivated. So it'll be an interesting matchup. I could see Iowa State getting upset first round potentially.
Well, and it's funny you say that because I was thinking the same thing when you mentioned what I feel is an advantage for all of these lower seeded teams.
Yep.
One, they've won their conference tournament.
Yeah.
Two, they are hungry and excited. And three, they can play more freely without the pressure, as I was mentioning before. As pressure mounts during a game, how do you handle that pressure? You don't feel like, hey, I'm just happy I got a chance to be invited to the party, so I'm going to sit and get drunk and have a good time. You might play your best ball. Whereas if you're like, hey, you know what, I'm throwing this party and I'm worried if I'm going to make sure that the party is a good party, all of a sudden you might not perform in the same way. So we'll see what happens.
Yep. And then, like I said, in the second round there, potentially you got a Chris Beard versus an Iowa State matchup. I'm going Chris Beard because he knows how to play Iowa State. He's been in the conference, everything else. Iowa State, like I said, the instability there, potentially even losing first round. I just don't know if it's going to work out. I'm picking a 6 seed to come out of that little quadrant there, if anything.
And I have to say, I like Marquette, New Mexico. New Mexico is another one of those teams that I feel like I see their name every year, not knowing much about their conference and their play, but they always have that ability to be that upset team.
They play at that place called the Pit, from what I understand, and down in New Mexico, which is supposed to be a destination, apparently. Got to do that one of these days. Marquette, coached by Shaka Smart.
And Marquette is Marquette. They have a pedigree and a legacy, and Shaka was there a long time ago. What did he make the final game when he was? Who was he coaching? VCU.
Shaka was with VCU when he made the Final Four run.
Mm-hmm.
Then he went over to Texas, made a brief little run there. He kind of got run out a little bit because
they didn't do a whole lot with him there.
Then he went back to Marquette, and now he's been able to recruit again like he did back at VCU. So it'll be interesting to see the tier of mid-major players that he's brought in. He's got a great team. They came out of a tough conference because they were in the same conference as Creighton and UConn and St. John's. So battle tested. I'm going Shaka Smart on that one.
Matter of fact, I'm going with Shaka Smart twice. I think people, don't get me wrong, Michigan State has a resurgence. They have that legacy. They got the coach. He's been there since, 1899, but I have a feeling that Shaka is going to make a little run this time.
I think so. I'm feeling a Shaka run. As much as I love Tom Izzo, he doesn't have Mateen Cleaves. He doesn't have that crew.
Mateen Cleaves was a player, even though I don't know what happened to him after that because he really didn't do anything in the pros. And
NBA,
wasn't he the one who broke his ankle or something and played through it? And my hat's off to you, Mateen, wherever you are. Maybe you change your name, Mateen, because what is Mateen? All right. That's my team. That's my coach.
Yep.
Anyway.
This quadrant in the South, it'll be interesting to see who makes it up to play the top half. So, I think we've got Ole Miss, Iowa State, Marquette, Michigan State. I mean, you could see a Shaka Smart run out of this thing.
I'm taking Michigan State. I think that they could win this conference or this quad. I think they could win this.
Yep, I'll go with that. Let's move down to, I would believe this is the West. Yes, this is the West, interestingly. So you got Florida having to go out West. SEC champions, by the way, in the tournament, not regular season. They are a loaded team. Their front line is huge. Their entire court is huge. They play with guys nothing but 6'7" and up. They are big. So athletic. This is Florida we're talking about. I like them. The interesting matchup with the defending champs in round 2. Two-time defending champs.
they are the defending champs twice. 2 consecutive championships, but they look very vulnerable this year.
They are. And I don't get a chance to watch 60 Minutes. They did a nice little piece on Danny Hurley. Actually,
I saw it. Ago. Yeah, I saw that. The other Hurley.
Yeah, he was very candid about it. I mean, he pretty much said that, NIL has even changed the game for him in terms of recruiting, loyalty, the whole 9 yards. So he was very, I think, upfront about it, which was kind of nice to see and hear. He just doesn't have the depth this year, in my opinion. He doesn't have that star set of players. He doesn't have the bench that's 10 deep like he's had the last 2 years to win the title. So I think that makes it a little more challenging for them, to say the least, especially against a couple
of good players too, didn't they? They lost a couple of big time players who played near the basket, as well as I think the guard that went to the pros. So that's going to hurt.
Castle. Yep.
Yeah.
No,
that's going to hurt you.
No, so
and if they can't beat Oklahoma, let's just be real.
Yeah,
I'm picking Florida probably on one of my sheets to win it all.
I think a lot of people are. I am curious. So in the bottom set there with the Memphis Maryland bracket, I'm picking Memphis. I'm picking Penny Hardaway and his boys. I like their team. I like that mix up, and I like his recruiting squad. Maryland is interesting. So being a local here, I'll pay attention to see what they've got. They got a kid named Derek Queen. This kid came out of a local project out of PG County, same school as Kevin Durant. The DMV is known for its basketball and brand. Obviously, with NIL, this kid was lured to Maryland to stay home, obviously. This kid is special. He's going to be a top 5 pick in the NBA draft. Can he carry a team that isn't that deep past, a deep run in March? I don't think so. But I'm curious to see that matchup I'm curious to see that Memphis Maryland matchup in round 2, because you got, I forget the name of the kid at Memphis. Same thing, another top 5 pick that Penny Hardaway found. Whole 9 yards. We're talking about Memphis. It's going to be a great 1-versus-1 matchup in that game, because they're talking about 2 kids that are a small forward that are just going to be balling lights out, like 20 points a game kind of thing. So it'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, I tell you what, unless there's a resurrection of Lynn Bias, Maryland is not going far.
I agree. They've got to get back to the days of Gary Williams and the crew from 2002 when they made that special run. So that's not going to happen. Juan Dixon, baby. Juan Dixon's still a local legend, by the way.
And rest in peace, Lynn Bias, because that was such a tragic thing that happened, that transpired over that year.
Agreed. That said, winner of Memphis, Maryland, probably facing Florida. I think Florida probably runs out the top gamut. No questions asked over there.
And then what do we have? So the last one is Duke and who else? So we've got Duke and Missouri.
I was going to talk about this part of the bracket here. So this is where it gets interesting. This is what I call the Goon Squad bracket, because you've got Self, Calipari, Patino,
all of those coaches,
Providence, all for one weekend.
Those coaches.
You've got literally the Goon Squad sitting there. Now, who's going to make it out of that group? Honestly, I can't tell you. Kansas has woefully underperformed this year, given all the notoriety they had. They were the preseason one. Honestly, they don't play for the brand on the shirt anymore. I'll say that as a loyal Kansas fan. I wouldn't be surprised if Arkansas won this game, but honestly, Arkansas has been on a downward spiral for the last, I think, 6 games, if I'm not mistaken, in the SEC. I'll go Kansas round 1, but then they're going to play against Patino's boys. I love Patino's boys and those street ballers in round 2.
I'm actually going with Arkansas. I'm sorry, I got family in Arkansas. And Arkansas has played well at times, and like you said, they've had some bad spells as well. I got Arkansas beating Kansas, but I got St. John's going all the way in this lower part of the bracket.
Don't forget that Arkansas beat Kansas to start the year in a preseason matchup.
Yeah, I don't put a lot of weight in those.
It doesn't count, but you know, they know how to play. Now, I'm picking Texas Tech out of this bracket.
You got to go TT, baby. I'm with them too.
Yeah. That kid JT Toppin is a baller. He's Big 12 Player of the Year. You got another guy in Texas Tech that's got a stud background, stud coach, stud depth. This team is deep, mind you, which is why I love them to make the run here. They're going to have a tough time against Missouri, who plays very fast-paced ball. And by the way, the best resurrection story of college basketball. They went from being the bottom dwellers of the SEC at one point.
Right.
And their coach, forget the guy's name, black coach, unbelievable recruiting job, unbelievable culture change, everything else. So credit given to what are my nemesis in Missouri, or at least used to be.
Well, I'd like to see Missouri win because that's the state I was born in.
Yep.
I might take Missouri against Texas Tech. I might do that.
Yep.
Only because of the things you said. I think the way they play might dictate the way the other team will have to play. And that could mean something, a little bit for them. I don't know if they're going to make too much of a run. And I was trying to see if I could do what's his name? Who's the guy? Who is the big name ESPN analyst? Adam Scheffler. So
Schefter, yeah.
Schefter, no, Scheffler's the golfer. So Shefty, he likes to look up things while he's, on camera. You'll see him, defer to his phone. And I was looking to see if I could find the Missouri basketball coach, but of course, I can't type.
Let me see if I can find
Dennis
it real quick.
Gates.
Yes, Dennis Gates. That's it. Yep. No, they play
Missouri
a brand of basketball, and it's good.
Yeah, I'd like to see Missouri win. I think they can. I think they can even beat Texas Tech. Not sure they're going to go much further than that.
Yeah, St. Johnny's. I mean, I love the street ball kids that are coming out of there. They've got great. I think they've got a deep six, if I'm not mistaken. I've watched them play a couple times this year. St. John's looking pretty fresh out of this. So I think you got a potential St. John's Florida matchup. I'm probably going Florida on that one.
I'm going Florida on that one too, but I'd love to see it because I do think that those are the two best teams in that side of the bracket.
Yep. Let's go to the other side. Going back out east, you got Dukies. I'm picking Duke actually. As much as I hate them with a passion, I'm picking them as my national champs. They are 10 deep.
I can't take them. I did take them once, I think, in the last 20 years. I'm just not a Duke fan. What was that? What was that? 30 for 30. I hate Christian Laettner. I still hate Christian Laettner. All right.
Believe me, no. Having lived in Kentucky and understood the plight of Wildcat fans everywhere from '92, believe me, Christian Laettner is a pariah and a hated person anywhere in basketball. It does not matter where you're from.
Didn't he kill Jamal Mashburn's run?
He did.
That was Jamal the one where he hit that turnaround jumper with the key or whatever, that garbage shot.
Yep. That was it. But no, I have to take Duke. I have to take Duke on the simple premise that they are literally 10 deep this year. You got 5 guys that are going top 20 in the NFL and the NBA draft this year. It's ridiculous.
Well, I think you're right about Duke. I think they're really good. I think they could win it all. I won't pick them just because I hate Duke. So it's not based on anything other than that. But what I would say is this. We still don't know the depth of what Flagg's injury is.
Agreed.
So depending on that could be an obstacle they can't overcome.
My thing is that'll be the X factor as they get deeper into the tournament. I think through the first few rounds, they will do well enough in the first weekend, and if not, all the way through the Sweet 16 with at least the depth they have with the 8 to 10 players they have. Because frankly, their second best guy, Knuppel, that's another top 5 NBA pick that people don't talk about because he plays behind Cooper Flagg. Now, any other year in college basketball, I'm sorry, Cooper Flagg is not the best player in basketball. I'm not saying that with any type of hate for Cooper Flagg. I'm saying on the fact that, yeah, he's good. Don't get me wrong. I don't think he's going to have much of an NBA career. And I'm sorry, I'll bring up the grace card. He's white. I'm sorry.
Hey, I'm not going to say that there can't. There have been some great players that aren't black that went into the league and came out. And one of the best was from French Lick, Indiana.
Yes, absolutely. No question.
So I don't know what he'll do, but I do sort of think that he has been overhyped. I was going to say hyped, but he's actually been overhyped. We'll see what he does. But I'm always rooting against Duke. So if they lose in the first round because he doesn't play, I'm just going to laugh all for the next 2 weeks throughout the whole tournament. I'm just going to laugh.
I mean, I will say this with disdain. Every year we get the one guy from Duke, whether it's white or black, that always gets overhyped like crazy. And then, you see them being a bust. I'm sorry. Kyrie Irving never won a ring. Zion Williamson won a ring. You
can go right down the list.
Yeah. Like, honestly, Christian Laettner might be that one guy.
Or Grant Hill.
Yeah, that's true. Shane Battier. I mean, I can go down again. Carlos Boozer. I mean, we can go down this.
We can go because they've always had those great players. And actually, I think this speaks to a couple of things we were talking about earlier. Duke was one of those major colleges that automatically got two or three of the top 10, 15 players because they want to go to Duke. Because it's
name
Duke.
recognition.
That's it. It has nothing else.
I'll put this. This is where we'll take the NIL thing to sideways. At the end of the day, NIL money is going to dictate everything. But for that one kid or that few kids that think about this from a longer perspective, and this is where a shout out to some of the kids and maybe a PSA. Think about your longer term future, not just outside basketball. Think about the alumni base you are connecting to longer term for work, anything else you decide to do in your life. That Duke alumni network, let me tell you, it's powerful.
It is. But I'll offer this as a counter to that as well. I agree with all of that. But what about the kid who goes to Duke but won't get the kind of recognition and playing time because he's at Duke? Whereas he can go to Podunk U, and Podunk U, he's going to be the star, and things are going to rotate around, which can either make him great or actually make him worse than he was because he gets to pull it himself and no longer plays to the ability that they have, more into the ego part of what he is. So we'll see. Because that's a problem with some of the players, that you go to a program where now you're not number one or even two. How do you respond to that? Can you be the team player? Are you okay with averaging 8 points a game, 2 points a game because your number isn't being called like you're used to?
True. That's a valid point. Let's see, down the list here, Mississippi State, Baylor. Interesting matchup. Baylor still got Scott Drew, still got a great team. Honestly, they had a mediocre season in the Big 12. They never had solid point guard play, in my opinion. That was their biggest culprit, having watched enough of their games. I still see them as a threat. I see them probably pulling it out over Mississippi State, and it'll be an interesting matchup with Duke, provided Cooper Flag status is still up in the air.
I'm with you on that one. Baylor, Mississippi State's happy to be there. I mean, granted, they're the higher seed, whatever, but what have they really done? I feel like Baylor in their program, they're used to being in this situation. I think they'll prevail at least the first.
Yep. Oregon Liberty. I'm picking the 12-5 on this one. I'm going Liberty.
I'm with you on that one. I don't know much about Oregon, to be honest. But the fact that they moved to the Big Ten, I hope Liberty beats them.
Yep, exactly. Arizona, Akron. Now, Arizona is a team that is 5 deep, but nothing more, unfortunately. Yes, they were great in the Big 12 tournament. They got to the finals, lost to a very tough Houston team. I think they've got a great makings of a team that'll get through the first weekend, but I don't know if they're going to make it past the likes of a Duke at the end of the day because they don't have enough depth to make it.
Well, using your comments, outside of maybe the Fab Five, how many teams have only had really 5 good players and made it deep into the NCAAs? You're going to need that 6th and 7th player. And if you don't have it, you're going to be in trouble. Your guys are going to be winded by game 3, and they won't be able to produce in the game manner. So I'm with you on that.
The one thing I will say about Arizona, they've got a big kid, and I forget his name. He's out of, I believe, somewhere in Scandinavia. He's 7'4". He will be a matchup nightmare for Cooper Kupp.
I saw that. Yep. You said for Cooper Kupp.
Or sorry, yeah. We can fly Cooper Kupp. Yeah, they're both white. Yeah.
What'd you say he was from?
Arizona. He got a Scandinavian name. I forgot the name. Let's put it this way. He's the 2.0 version of Lauri Markkanen. Let's put it that way. Because they got a pipeline coming from there to Arizona these days.
Well, in Arizona, I have to say this: Arizona has a pedigree.
Yes.
Arizona has the ability to maybe
Well, they
pull
can
off
recruit
something. The guy that they have, his name is Henry Vassar.
That's it, Vassar. That's the guy. Yep.
Yep. They also have another guy, Matthias Previs.
Yep.
You know what? I'm going to say this because you mentioned something earlier about flag.
Yep.
I'm not saying that you aren't wrong about the white men can't jump kind of thing, but at the same time, I love a team that has a nice, diverse mix.
Yes.
Especially if you can have that one. UConn had it the last couple of years with the tall white guy in the middle.
Yeah, white guy.
You play ball. I love it when you have. You've got speed, and you've got sort of the guys who are playing that technically sound ball. If you can mix those two together, I think you have a chance. Arizona might have that chance. I'm not going to be sure about that.
I mean, let's put it this way: the couple of years that Kansas has won the national title, they had a white center. I'm just saying.
You know what? I'm taking that because you know what? A white center is not going to cry that he's not getting the ball enough. He's just going to play ball, get his rebounds, do what he needs to do. Sort of like a Rudy Gobert. You don't hear Rudy Gobert complaining. He's just happy when he gets the ball. He doesn't know what to do with it, but he does his job. That's all I want from my center. I can take my 1, 2s, and 3s, and if they're playing together, they can generate all the offense we need. We need you to be stoic down, get a couple of offensive rebounds. We can win the game.
I think you'd agree with this sentiment. It's backcourts that win the NCAA tournament.
Yeah. That's why I said I can score my points in my 1, 2, and 3s. Those are the guys that you're leaning on. And the 4s and 5s are the guys that are going to show up when you need it, going to play tough underneath, get those defensive rebounds and a few offensive rebounds to get your extra possessions. But I don't need to lean on you guys. You shouldn't be the star of my team. It should be 1, 2s, and 3s. Those are the guys who are going to be able to hit the 3s, penetrate, get the assists. That kind of stuff.
Nope. Like I said, anybody who's got a star backcourt 1 and 2, that's what really wins the titles in these latest, I'd say, last 20 years, give or take. Probably
that's proven. Take Shaquille O'Neal out of the equation and a couple of other centers. Who else in the center world has dominated in the college or pro landscape?
Right. Nope. That's absolutely it. Bottom half of this bracket. I mean, all I see is Alabama written over this. I love BYU. That team is another one that's blended around some homegrown talent. You got the white kids, you got everything over there. They shot 18 threes, an NCAA record during the Big 12 tournament to break a couple teams down. They can ball. That team can ball. Now, how they do on the road, I don't know. Also, they're going to be playing a VCU team. Don't know how that one goes. They'll be playing a Wisconsin team that plays methodically slow as usual.
They're not going to beat Wisconsin. Michigan beat Wisconsin. I don't think BYU can. Plus, I'll say this, and they've been arguing about this on television about the Boston Celtics and their style of play. I'm not the old school purist that you have to play within the key and down. But I feel like teams that rely on the threes too much.
Yeah. You can live and die
themselves in the end, because if you're not making those threes, you're getting long rebounds and runouts. And if you keep jacking up those threes when you're off, you're not getting any rebounds. You're not generating any offense. And now all of a sudden, your team looks like everybody's standing around the perimeter watching others play as opposed to being in the game. So there's a fine line of being successful doing that 3-point philosophy.
Yeah, now that's where, as much as it killed me, I would probably say Wisconsin's probably get the advantage coming out of that bracket. But if BYU gets hot enough to shoot the three, I'll go BYU. But if Wisconsin plays its brand of ball, BYU will be shut down from shooting those threes efficiently, basically.
I don't disagree with that.
Bottom half of this one, I got Bama all the way. I don't think there's much of a matchup. St. Mary's, I think, will beat Vanderbilt, but I see Bama and that kid Sears is just a baller for me. I love watching that kid as a guard. He's special.
I like him too. Light skinned brother. He can ball. Yep. I like the way he plays. I like his little throw. I think that they have the swag.
Yes.
And the talent, and if they are successful, I think the more success they have, the more successful they'll be.
Team with a solid guard. Yeah, team with a solid guard and Sears, and they got a white boy in the middle that's from down south that can play too. And I forget his name. Play too. Mustache.
Yep. I would say this though, just to be, as the other side of this discussion, St. Mary's. Remember St. Mary's? It's usually St. Mary's and Gonzaga, right? In their conference, right?
Yes. Yep.
Don't sleep on St. Mary's.
Never sleep on St. Mary's, because for some reason they got this weird pipeline out of Australia and New Zealand that always finds these obscure players that can ball out.
That can ball. That can ball. So, and tall. So,
yes.
Just be aware that they have that capability of pulling off the upset here. I feel like if they don't do it, Alabama will go all the way.
Yep, I agree. That bracket with Alabama and Duke, it's gonna be, if that's what it comes to be in the Elite Eight, it'll be a hell of a matchup. It'll be interesting to see if Duke has flag. I'm picking Duke. If they don't have flag, I think it's gonna be a very close game in that Elite Eight.
I'm agreeing with that.
Yep. Bottom half Midwest bracket, Houston. Houston's been a juggernaut all year. I love Kelvin Sampson as a coach. Again, guy that's been known for a little bit of a scumbag, but honestly, he wasn't that much of a scumbag. All he did was make a couple phone calls.
Yeah,
that's all he did.
Yeah, again, nothing different than most every coach was doing. Every school was doing. He just got called out on.
Yep. So no, I think that guy is due a championship. He has done a phenomenal job recruiting, coaching. Like, that guy knows how to build programs. He did it at Oklahoma. He almost did it at Indiana without the phone calls. He did it again at Houston at Phi Slamma Jamma.
But will they win a championship? Can he win a championship?
Tough run coming. I mean, you got Houston. I think, like you said, Gonzaga, I think will make it out of that first round matchup. So you got to play a Gonzaga team that's always game with Mark Few. No questions asked. Yep. I'm not sold on Purdue. I'm picking a 4-13 upset. I'm going High Point on this one, baby. I'm going High Point over Purdue on the first round on that one.
Are you really? I don't think I can stretch it that far.
It'll be a tough one. Here's where it gets interesting, though. I don't know if you followed McNeese State at all this year. Don't forget the basketball team. Apparently, their most popular figure is their team manager. It's this kid named Amir Khan. And apparently, dude by himself has an NIL deal because of how entertaining he is as the team manager of McNeese State.
They pay him for being the manager.
The school doesn't pay him. He gets NIL deals. This kid walks around with a boombox, the whole 9 yards. He's got the brand. He's got the Instagram page. He's got everything. Just look him up anytime you want. This kid is pure gold to watch. And because of that, they've got a senior-laden team on that McNeese State squad. They're ready to ball. They're ready to ball.
I'm going to look Amir Khan up real quick.
Yep. Look up Amir Khan, McNeese State.
That's funny because I got another Amir Khan.
The most famous Amir Khan in the world is actually an actor from India, but he has a whole different brand.
Okay. That's funny because there's another Amir Khan who is a British professional boxer.
Yep, there is. Amir Khan's a very common name, but the most famous one is an actor that's from Pakistan and India. He's probably got like 4 billion followers, if anything, because that guy's unbelievable. Then there's Amir Khan, the boxer, who is actually very, very successful.
Yes.
And then you got Amir Khan, the State boy.
I know the boxer. I don't know the actor. And then here it says this guy's a legend, becomes first student manager of the NIL deal.
Yep.
Yeah.
This kid's a vibe. So he'll be entertaining. Clemson, I don't know. I just don't see him as a basketball school, but I could be wrong.
Hey.
I hear they're good. I mean, Clemson will probably win that matchup because it's an ACC team. They're playing well. They got, I think, a deep team in terms of like 5 solid players up front. So they'll probably beat McNeese, but I would love to see the upset there.
I'm an upset guy too, so we'll see what happens. Not sure about High Point. Here's another one too. Illinois.
ILL. So I love this team. I think they are a bunch of ballers. And remember, this is a team, when they're beating the best, they've beaten them by 20. They're the only team in NCAA history to go on the road and beat 3 top 15 teams by 20 points on the road.
But they're still Illinois.
They are still Illinois. And the interesting thing is the feed-in game here. So the feed-in game here is actually Texas. I forgot their Texas matchup, but 2 schools that were on the final 4 in. Xavier. They're the last 4 in. you're talking about some big school matchups there. Illinois versus Texas, Illinois versus, Xavier. Jeez.
Makes you wonder.
Yep. So I'm going Illinois. I like their starting five. I like the fact that these guys could put up 90 points a game potentially. The better matchup is second round. You got a Kentucky team that's underperformed all year. They're undergoing a transition,
thing, isn't it? For the last 15, 20 years, aren't they underperformed?
Well, under Calipari, yes. Now you've got their new coach in, former Kentucky grad, Mark Pope. I mean, former champ with Jamal Mashburn, by the way. I like the grit of the team. The problem is they don't have any star power on that team. So I'm actually going Illinois over Kentucky in this quadrant.
I'd love to see it. Not sure I can put my money on that though.
Yeah, it's a tough one. And then the bottom half, I got Tennessee running the table out of this entire piece.
Well, and honestly, I feel like Tennessee has the ability to take it off. They've shown that they can play in a tough conference and beat tough teams. They won the conference. I just wonder, again, Tennessee has had some teams like this in the past, and they've choked.
Well, their problem is it's not their players. Their players are awesome. I think they've got a great team, great players, hungry players. Zakiya Ziegler is a baller in that backcourt. Their problem is they're coached by Rick Barnes. I have historically said it since he was in Texas. The dude could flat out recruit the greatest teams on earth. He recruited Kevin Durant, for God's sakes, and like that whole squad back then. He had, I forget the name of the kid that Royal Ivy. I mean, I could go down the list of how many Texas greats there have been, and he's had stellar squads when he was there and even at Tennessee.
But can he win?
He chokes against the big team moments. So because it's a Rick Barnes team, I'm not picking him into the Final Four. But I will take him out of this bracket.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a tough.
You got Bama, you got Houston out of the top half of this. I'm thinking I'm going Houston out of the Midwest.
Well, see, and we were talking about this earlier, and you could probably apply this to many of the different, tournaments in the past. But I feel like this is chalk. While there might be an upset here or there, I feel like chalk after the first couple of rounds is going to win the day. I mean, who's going to beat the Houstons and the Tennessees and the Alabamas and
the
Auburns? Who's going to beat those teams?
Yeah, if I saw the percentages right last night, almost 80 or 85% of the brackets are picking pretty much chalk into the Final Four at this point. This is ridiculous.
Well, the funny thing is how many times that happened. I'm not going to look that one up. Do you want to continue with the latter parts after the first couple of rounds?
I mean,
one day we could do a recap of what happened up to the
Absolutely. Yeah, I think next week would be the perfect pickup because then we'll see what the Sweet 16 looks like. I mean, right now we've got potentially, I think between you and I, we got Duke and Bama. Winner of that will play, sounds like probably Houston in the Final Four on one end. And then on the other end, I think we got a consensus on Florida at the bottom, and then probably the winner of Auburn. Well, Auburn potentially, yeah, it looks like Auburn versus Michigan State or Auburn versus Shaka Smart. It's whatever out of this top half. This East bracket's going to be an interesting one. Or sorry, the South bracket's going to be an interesting one with Auburn.
So here's an interesting stat that I'll leave the audience with. What we call it. Only 3 times in the modern era have we had a Final Four without any number one seeds.
Okay.
Only once have we had all 4 number one seeds made the Final Four, and that was in 2008.
Wow.
So think about that.
Well, 2008 is when we won it, so yeah.
But I mean, it shows that despite what may seem a good possibility based on stats and the bracket, etc., only once have all number ones made it to the Final Four.
Well, we can talk about all the analytics and the history all we want. At the end of the day, it's the kid that's the hungriest and the team that's the hungriest that's going to make this run. No questions.
That's exactly right. And that's why you play the games, because it's not about, like we talked, just to round this out with NIL and stuff. The juggernaut schools have an advantage. NIL, not NIL, they always do. Recruiting, etc.
Yep.
But even with those teams, they aren't always winning these tournaments. And you see every now and again the teams pop up from the 3rd or 4th seed and then or do whatever. It's about what you're willing to give on game day and how you play for each other, because I'm all about team sports, I play football, how you play for each other in those moments. Are you ready to win? You're hoping to win.
Yep.
And some of these teams are hoping they win, even though they got all the glitz and glamour. They're so expected. It's like what I was saying before. You know, they were invited to the party, and now they have cameras on because people are doing live podcasts or live shows with them, and they have to be under so much stress because the expectation is they're supposed to win. So whenever things come in doubt, remember these are kids. These aren't adults. These are kids who are still learning and growing into their maturity. Are they going to be able to handle the moment?
If there's one thing that I've learned and one thing that I preach, there's talent, which obviously takes you so far, and then there's heart. Heart will win you championships.
All day long. That grit, the willingness to go through the crap and still be able to put your best out. Whereas some people are going through the crap and they cave.
Yep.
So we'll see what happens. I'm hopeful that we see more upsets than what I'm expecting, because I love the upset. I love the Cinderella story. I love to see the 12 and the 13 seed. I love the win. I hated it because I had Virginia in my bracket, but I love the when Virginia lost to the 16 seed.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
That matters.
I love it. Yes. No, I absolutely love that. And in the spirit of NIL and everything else, that's where I want to see the kids from the smaller schools get their moment. That's the thing. I want to see that happen, regardless of the beauty of the Cinderella story and everything else. This is where they get their moment to shine. It's an open playing field. You got 68 teams. Go get it. Simple as
that. Agree.
Yep.
Bro.
Yep. On that note, we wrap up today's episode. But like I said, let's pick this back up with some more fun banter on not just the follow-up to this tournament, but maybe a little bit more chatter on NIL and everything else going on in sports. It is the beginning of the baseball season. They started in Tokyo this morning. Your Cubbies, unfortunately, lost.
I was so mad. I turned on my morning news, and it was Dodgers against the Cubs, and it was like the 6th or 7th inning. I'm like, I don't care about this. This game means nothing to me. I think it's great for the sport of baseball. I think it's a great way to give something back to Japan, because they have these great players that have come to the league, and now they got an opportunity to bring them back home and play in front of their home fans. But don't preempt my news with a Cubs game.
Right. Especially when right now in baseball, unfortunately, I feel like it's the entire league versus the Dodgers.
Isn't it though? You know, and here, this is talking about NIL. Okay, it's not NIL, but if you think about it, the Dodgers and the Yankees have had this grip on baseball for what?
Way too long. Yep.
And I feel like they're just getting better and better. Not but they're getting better and better. The Dodgers went out and got Shohei.
Yep.
And they didn't even need them. But they didn't need them. They already had a great pitching staff. They already had a great hitters. And they're just getting better. The Yankees spend the money. They just don't get better.
Yeah. No, that's the thing. Yeah. Well, that's what I said. It's literally the entire world versus the Dodgers at this point. The Dodgers have mortgaged their entire, 100-year future for the 5 years that they'll have this dominance in baseball right now. And we'll talk about baseball at a later time, but at the end of the day, you need the salary cap in baseball. Otherwise, this is just ridiculous.
I don't disagree with that. And I feel for the small market teams because I feel like they just can't compete.
No, never.
No, because what happens is they'll get a good player, they develop them, and then the Dodgers swoop in. Because if you look at the Dodgers team, they got Mookie Betts. At one time, Mookie Betts was the best player on the Boston Red Sox.
Yes. Right? And now he's third fiddle.
So it's just a little unfair. I'd like to see a little bit more parity there. It sort of reminds me of your St. Louis Cardinals winning the Central Division 15, 20 years in a row. Yep. It's just unfair.
Oh, now St. Louis is a forgotten after that. Nobody wants to play there anymore and everything else.
I sort of like that. I'm sorry, you guys deserve every bit of that, all right?
That city has gone through more depression than you can imagine. No football team. Baseball is now down in the shitter. Take your pick.
Yeah, the football team ran away.
Think about it. Football team ran away. Beer company ran away. Baseball's running away. What's left? All you guys Mark Twain stories in a river left.
Oh man. I'm sorry, but I can't cry for you, Argentina, because St. Louis has had it for so long.
Absolutely.
Come live in Chicago and root for the Chicago team for a while. See how that works.
Exactly. But no,
on that note,
yep.
Wishing you all a wonderful day.
Absolutely.
Let's see what the tournament brings. I'm anxious for it. Maybe we get a chance to do this right before the tournament on Thursday.
Yeah.
I wish everybody health and happiness. And remember, we are a community, a race of people, and it shouldn't matter your race or your creed or your color, but the substance of your character, as a once famous man said. Let's treat each other like people. Maybe we can make our society a little bit better.
Treat each other like people, and remember, sport brings everyone together. That's what we try to hopefully find.
Right.
Yep.
So true. So true.
Yep.
All
On that note, see you guys later.
Enjoy the day. Peace.
Yep.
Peace.